Did the judge in the Karmelo Anthony case issue a gag order? A gag order basically stops the participants, so witnesses, attorneys, parties in the case, from speaking about the trial publicly.
You wake up to a breaking news alert that sends the Karmelo Anthony case spiraling into a whole new direction. This time, it's not about murder charges or courtroom testimony. It's about money. A lot of money. Federal prosecutors have just confirmed that Karmelo Anthony's parents are now facing multiple counts of real estate fraud tied directly to the $30 million sale of their luxury mansion. The property, a sprawling estate on the outskirts of Atlanta, was sold just months before the stabbing of Austin Metcalf.
Anthony previously claimed self-defense to officers on scene. Tuesday, we spoke to Russell Wilson, an attorney not associated with this case.
On the surface, it looked like a standard high-end transaction, but according to investigators, the deal was anything but ordinary. Court documents allege that the Anthonys inflated the property's value using falsified appraisal reports, misrepresented renovation records, and even submitted fake tenant income statements to secure an inflated sale price. This, prosecutors say, allowed them to collect millions more than the property was truly worth, money that is now under scrutiny for its possible connection to the events leading up to Metcalf's death. Federal agents began digging into the sale after spotting irregular wire transfers from the closing funds. Within days of the transaction, large sums were allegedly moved into a series of newly created LLCs, companies with no employees, no offices, and no legitimate business activity. Several of those LLCs, investigators claim, were opened under the names of extended family members and close associates. This isn't just a paper crime. The Department of Justice believes the sale and subsequent transfers may have been part of a larger financial scheme, one potentially designed to hide assets, pay off certain individuals, or fund actions related to the murder timeline. And now, with fraud charges stacked on top of the already explosive murder indictment, Karmelo's parents aren't just fighting to clear their names. They're fighting to keep their entire financial empire from collapsing. The indictment outlines the alleged fraud in detail, and the numbers are staggering. Investigators say that in addition to falsified property records, Karmelo Anthony's parents orchestrated a straw buyer scheme, using a third party to purchase the mansion under a different name to disguise the true nature of the sale. According to federal sources, the buyer was a longtime family acquaintance with no visible income history and no prior real estate holdings. Yet, records show they purchased the $30 million estate outright. No mortgage, no financing, just a clean wire transfer. Within 2 weeks, prosecutors say, title to the property quietly transferred back to a shell corporation tied to the Anthonys. Even more suspicious is what happened after the funds cleared. Bank statements reveal 4 separate transfers to overseas accounts, 2 in the Cayman Islands, 1 in Belize, and 1 to a private bank in Switzerland. Federal investigators allege that at least one of these accounts is now being examined as part of the broader homicide investigation. The U.S. Attorney's Office claims this wasn't an isolated case of creative accounting. It was a coordinated fraud operation involving forged signatures, doctored tax records, and falsified repair invoices. Agents seized multiple computers and hard drives from the Anthony residence during a recent search, and insiders say forensic teams are sifting through terabytes of financial records, looking for proof the funds were strategically moved to avoid detection. For prosecutors, this is a game changer. Fraud charges are easier to prove than conspiracy to commit murder, and if they can convict on the financial crimes, it could pave the way for longer sentences and additional leverage in the murder case. With the fraud case now public,
Karmelo
the Anthonys
Anthony.
face a two-front
Boy,
war,
boy, boy.
defending themselves
How
against
disappointing
allegations of
in a
financial
lot of black
deceit,
people
while
take
still
on the
staring down the
Karmelo
most
Anthony
serious
situation.
criminal charge of all, first-degree murder. As federal prosecutors build their case, they've begun connecting the fraud directly to the timeline of Austin Metcalf's death. According to newly unsealed court documents, at least $150,000 from the $30 million mansion sale was withdrawn in cash just 9 days before the high school track meet where the murder took place. Surveillance images from a Midtown Atlanta bank branch, submitted as evidence, allegedly show Karmelo's father entering with a leather briefcase and leaving minutes later with it visibly bulging. The withdrawal was broken into 3 separate transactions across different accounts, a move prosecutors call a classic structuring tactic designed to evade federal currency transaction reporting requirements. But the real bombshell came when investigators matched a portion of those funds to 2 separate cashier's checks, each for $25,000, made out to individuals the DOJ has labeled persons of interest in the ongoing murder probe. These checks were deposited within 48 hours, and both recipients have since refused to cooperate with authorities. The prosecution's theory: the fraudulent mansion sale didn't just pad the Anthony's bank accounts, it generated liquid, untraceable funds that could be used to influence witnesses, pay for services, or secure silence in the aftermath of the murder. While the defense insists the money was for unrelated family business, prosecutors say the timing is too precise to ignore. Federal agents have also subpoenaed phone records from the day of the withdrawal, showing multiple calls between Karmelo's parents and his personal cell phone. Those calls, investigators claim, line up almost exactly with movements captured on cell tower data, movements that placed Karmelo within striking distance of the track meet on the day Austin Metcalf was killed. It's a connection the prosecution plans to hammer home. The $30 million fraud wasn't just a white-collar crime. It was potentially the financial backbone of a far more violent plan. The mansion sale fraud case took another turn when federal investigators revealed emails recovered from a wiped laptop seized during the Anthony home search. Digital forensics teams managed to retrieve a chain of messages between Karmelo's mother and a high-profile real estate attorney. At first glance, the exchanges looked like standard legal correspondence, but buried in the drafts folder were unsent emails containing coded language that prosecutors believe reference both the fraudulent sale and the events surrounding Austin Metcalf's murder. One draft, dated just 5 days before the track meet, read, "Everything will be tied up by Friday. Funds secured. We just need to make sure the other thing is handled quietly." The U.S. Attorney's Office alleges that funds secured referred to the $30 million closing payout, while the other thing was a veiled nod to silencing a loose end, possibly someone who knew too much about the mansion scheme or its connection to the murder timeline. Adding weight to the theory, a separate email, this one sent and recovered from the attorney's cloud archive, contained an attachment prosecutors say was a falsified repair invoice for $480,000. The document appeared to show extensive renovations on the mansion, but county permit records confirmed that no such work had ever been approved or inspected. Investigators argue the inflated invoices were used to justify the property's inflated sale price and launder a portion of the closing funds into personal accounts. Forensic accountants working with the DOJ testified that the fraudulent invoices and the quiet handling language are classic indicators of commingling legitimate and illegitimate funds, a tactic that makes tracking the money far more difficult for law enforcement. The defense team dismissed the recovered emails as incomplete thoughts and out-of-context paperwork, but prosecutors are framing them as the smoking gun, digital proof that the fraud was deliberate, premeditated, and possibly intertwined with the murder's planning phase. The prosecution's narrative strengthened further when federal agents disclosed a confidential informant had stepped forward, claiming direct knowledge of how the $30 million mansion funds were moved in the days before the murder. According to the informant's signed affidavit, they were approached by Karmelo's father with instructions to move some numbers around to prevent the feds from freezing the accounts. The informant says they were given access to an encrypted USB drive containing spreadsheets and transaction logs for multiple shell companies tied to the Anthony family. These logs allegedly showed a rapid sequence of transfers, first into domestic LLC accounts, then pushed overseas into accounts in Panama and the Cayman Islands. The total amount moved, just over $2.7 million. But the most damning detail was a handwritten note tucked inside the same envelope as the USB drive. Scrawled in blue ink, it read, "If they start digging, this needs to disappear before meet day." Prosecutors believe meet day refers to the high school track meet where Austin Metcalf was killed. They allege the timing is no coincidence, painting a picture of the Anthonys rushing to secure their finances in anticipation of legal fallout from the murder. Bank records obtained via subpoena also show unusual withdrawals in the days following the killing, including a single $18,000 cash pull made just 36 hours after Austin's death. This withdrawal was flagged internally by the bank, but reportedly overruled by a branch manager familiar with the family. The DOJ now says the financial and homicide investigations are no longer separate cases. They are merged into a single criminal conspiracy file. If prosecutors can prove that the fraudulent mansion sale helped finance or cover up actions tied to the murder, the Anthony parents could face a stacked federal sentence that would all but guarantee life behind bars. As the merged case moves forward, prosecutors have started mapping out the full paper trail in court, a visual timeline that's as damning as it is complex. Projected on the courtroom screens, jurors watched as arrows connected the $30 million mansion sale to a chain of financial events: inflated appraisal reports, falsified renovation invoices, shell company accounts, rapid offshore transfers, large cash withdrawals. Each node on the chart was paired with a date, and more often than not, those dates sat alarmingly close to key moments in the Austin Metcalf murder timeline. One date stood out above the rest: 3 days before the track meet. That's when, according to FBI testimony, $75,000 was funneled into an account controlled by a consulting agency with no physical office and a disconnected phone number. Subpoenaed emails revealed Karmelo's mother thanking the agency for keeping this off the books. Language prosecutors insist was a coded instruction to conceal the payment. Even more unsettling for the defense, metadata from those same emails showed they were sent from a tablet logged into Karmelo's personal Apple ID. Prosecutors argue this indicates the son may have been aware, or at least in proximity, when these financial moves were being coordinated. To counter the growing narrative, the defense tried to argue the funds were for unrelated real estate ventures and that Karmelo had no involvement in the financial operations of his parents. But the optics were disastrous. The overlap between money in motion and murder in motion was impossible to ignore. Federal prosecutors closed the day's arguments with a statement that hung heavy in the air. You don't move millions of dollars through ghost companies and offshore accounts by accident, especially not when a murder is about to make headlines. With the fraud charges and murder case now braided together, the Anthonys are running out of room to separate their financial empire from the blood on their hands. By the final week of pretrial motions, the prosecution's case had shifted from piecing together 2 separate crimes to presenting a single, unbroken chain, a story in which the $30 million mansion sale wasn't just suspicious, but strategically engineered to bankroll and protect the events surrounding Austin Metcalf's murder. Federal agents revealed that the last transfer from the sale, a $50,000 wire sent just 24 hours before the track meet, was routed through 3 intermediary accounts before landing in a personal account belonging to an individual now identified as a critical witness in the murder investigation. That witness has since refused to testify, invoking the Fifth Amendment after being granted immunity, which prosecutors say speaks volumes. Adding to the drama, Homeland Security forensic teams produced deleted voice memos recovered from a phone seized at the Anthony residence. In one, a man prosecutors identified as Karmelo's father can be heard saying, "Once this closes, no one can touch us. The rest will sort itself out." The defense objected, arguing the clip was taken out of context, but the damage to public perception was immediate. Media outlets ran the audio on repeat, and headlines screamed about arrogance in the face of justice. Outside the courthouse, the Metcalf family stood before cameras, holding a framed photo of Austin in his track uniform. His father's words cut through the noise. They thought they could buy their way out of this, but money doesn't erase the truth. As the fraud trial looms, it's clear the Anthonys now face a perfect storm: federal fraud charges, a murder indictment, and a mountain of digital and financial evidence linking the two. For prosecutors, the mansion wasn't just a home. It was the gateway to a financial paper trail that could seal the Anthonys' fate once and for all.